All right. Well, welcome to today's webinar. I am super excited here for just the topic we have at hand. This is always anything call center related is always a big topic. It's obviously near and dear to all three of us here and what we touch on a daily basis. The new customers coming in the door here, running a call center is hard. Doing it for years and years, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of training, a lot of technology, and that's why I brought Megan and Ruben here with us today. So without further ado, Megan, I'll let you kind of have the floor. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Megan Beattie, and I work for Hoty Consulting. And what we do is we help people with lead generation issues. Sometimes that's conversions on the call center side. We also do a fair amount with outbound marketing, inorganic marketing, such as shows and events, canvassing, brand ambassador programs, pretty much any way that you can make leads out of little or nothing, we specialize in. So, we have a fair amount on traditional marketing in terms of, experience as well. But really our baby is, call center conversions and leads that necessarily aren't buying right now. And with effective scripting, we can move the needle and move their timeline up to sooner rather than later. So we also do a lot with teaching companies how to make the most out of their lead aggregators and how to, get the most bang for their buck if they're going to buy leads somewhere. So.
Absolutely. So, which is everything that a company needs to do in their call centers to maximize every lead that gets in the door here. So, again, thank you, Megan, for joining us here today. Ruben, tell us a little about yourself and your background.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean, and good to see Megan again. We've done a couple webinars in the past. So my name is Ruben Ugarte. I'm the Director of Home Services here at Active Prospect. We're a middleware and are considered a lead management, compliance, and routing platform. We sit in front of the CRM to help cleanse, filter, reject, append the consumer data that home service brands are taking in either from their own website or properties or a lot of third-party leads that people are purchasing. So we're essentially a digital filtration system. We have about 130 clients, some large kind of nationwide brands like Empire Today, DeBella, Titan Home Improvement, but all the way down to, and I'm proud to say, a lot of smaller bath clients, window and door clients like Chattanooga and Wisconsin and all over America that dominate in their region, whether on the West Coast or East Coast. And we have a lot of call centers that brands use. So I'm here to riff off of you guys and explore kind of some value adds that we can share.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to kind of dive into the weeds here a little bit. Thank you guys again for both joining me into and diving in here. Obviously, we actually, this is a follow-up. A lot of our webinars here are follow-ups from what topics we did last year, and the problems we all faced last year are, some of them are the same and some of them are a little bit different here. So we're going to kind of keep building off of what we talked about here last year and kind of maximizing our call center's potential. So a couple big kind of just issues that companies have started to feel a little bit more this year that wasn't the case as much last year this time was that lead volume is down and new leads are coming in the door at a fewer rate. So how to be able to change that, the trajectory, maximizing every lead that gets in the door is just ever more pressing of a concern today. Obviously, hiring is a huge concern today as well. Just how do you, it's been always an issue within the call center space, a higher turnover space. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into that here with us today. But the first question I had for you both is really just tips and tricks that you see companies using and really this year and what the kind of trends that you see to maximize their call center performance. So Megan, I'll let you have first crack at it, and then I'll let you have that Ruben next.
Sure. Yeah. So a couple main things, and it's probably repeat for some people, but I got to tell you, I feel like I have to continue to mention those core things over and over because I got to tell you, I'm still not seeing all companies doing it. So that means they need to hear it again, right? So couple of things. First of all, we've got to get to leads right away. I obviously in what I do, I favor a phone call, but I'm also in the belief system of we also have to utilize other methodologies that we know get answers answered. So we can also utilize texting. I think incorrect belief system I see out there a lot is we should do one or the other. And the truth is we should do both. And so I think too often times I get well, Megan, should we text or call? And the answer is yes. Right. And because we should do both. And so emails as well. Right. So if by land, air, and sea, we say at Tony Hoty Consulting, we have to hit them from all avenues. Right. So first of all, we have to get to the lead right away. The person, when they fill out the lead form, whether that be a lead aggregator lead or even an inbound lead coming to the call center, the moment they type in their name, number, and address, that's the height of excitement about looking into this project right at that moment. They take the action. And if we don't capitalize on that momentum, they can cool off quickly. Something in life can happen that sort of throws off their plan of doing their bathroom right now. And if we don't get to these leads right away, we don't know what might happen. The worst thing that can happen is another contractor gets to them before us, which also happens. And in the words of the great Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. And that's what they say quite often in this specific scenario. So we have to get to these leads first before anyone else. And then the other best practice is, we really have to look at the person we have answering the phone. It seems to me that we have this belief system that the leads that come to us through lead form are kind of a gimme. Well, I mean, in some cases they are. Certainly we'll get some that are pretty easy with very little resistance. But if we want both spouses at the appointment, if the customer asks us to give them a price over the phone, if they ask us how far out is our installation time, and we don't have ways to answer that effectively, we could end up not making the most out of these leads. And so, while I would agree that, the inbound lead that's already got an interest is going to be, easier to convert than the 1-year-old lead in my database that's cooled off. I also believe that we have to do ourselves a service of making sure the person fielding the leads is a priority. And not only that, but they're trained properly. I can't tell you how many times I hear the phone answered improperly and a customer feel like, the person on the other line could care less as to whether they called or not. And that just, when we are paying as owners, massive amounts of money out to drive these leads into the company through an aggregator or otherwise, we have to say, wow, if I'm spending this much, what's spending a little bit on training for, Sally over here that's answering the phone so that she can be confident and do it most effectively. So those are the things that I see, the companies that are making the highest returns are all doing those things, getting the leads right away and making sure the person answering the phone, fielding the leads, number one, has time to do so. And number two, is trained properly. So those are the main things.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think, I think obviously a training being a huge piece of that here too. I think we hear that all time and time again, is that you hire someone new and they have to learn and get trained on your product and how to overcome objections. But sometimes that's like those scripts, they can have all the right things to say, but it's how they say it, how they approach that conversation. There's just so many of those like intrinsic values. And I was just talking to someone else the other day on that kind of sparked my mind, is that there's like, that's where I've seen kind of a trend with some companies changing even this word call center and that mentality of being a call center to like an inside sales environment, because those people are like, that's your first touch point to every one of these leads. You got to be able to sell the value of that here too. Ruben, I'll let you take the floor here and we'll dive into this a little more.
Yeah, I know the name call center is kind of old school, right? So we back at the solar company I used to work with, we used to call it the contact center, and everybody was a contact center agent. I know now it's inside sales agent, which I love. But no, I agree with everything Megan said, and I think so we're at the top of the funnel, right? Kind of before the CRM, we're helping the delivery of the leads, but I don't get as into sometimes the training that goes on behind it. But what I will say is exactly what Megan said, is that call center teams need to have robust scripts, test scripts. I know a lot of call centers out there who, they have different scripts for different seasons, and they're always testing them and making sure, hey, does this like script and this wordplay match third-party leads or organic leads or field marketing leads or whatever it is. And so if there's call center, contact center managers listening or brands listening, cultivating to really kind of, I think, culture around your call center, not just like, hey, we're bringing phone numbers in, we're calling, we're doing something, I think it's key to have that whole strategic outbound script along with obviously your lead mix, but know which ones go with what. And then also, I think reporting speed to lead, like what is your speed to lead by channel? Do you have the ability to route leads to different agents? And how do you treat leads? Is every lead treated the same, or is there some sort of democracy of a routing where the best lead agents or inside sales agents get the best leads and vice versa? So I think there's a whole area of really training that goes on between the brands who are doing it successfully and the ones who are just kind of trying to figure it out.
Yeah, well, I think you brought up a couple of really good points there. One that I've kind of proposed back to you guys is kind of like from a speed to lead side, is that leads come in, especially with online, we're on our devices after hours, where, like normal call center hours are, maybe you're there at 8 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night. Yeah. And we talk about speed to lead. Well, it's like, well, if everybody's run the same hours, what about the person who fills out the form at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock? No, what do you do with speed to lead on that one? What's the best kind of practices you've kind of seen companies do and those kind of after hours or even weekends? Obviously call centers, are you staffing a call center 7 days a week, or kind of what's the best practice on that side you've seen?
Well, I would say that if we aren't going to be able to field it live, I would always say that up until 9 p.m., which is, in most states legal to call people till, we should have someone on staff that can handle it. Even if our call center closes at 6 or 7 or even 8, maybe we have someone on call that can handle those leads until 9 p.m. After that, if they are going to fill out a lead form online at a weird hour of the night, I haven't seen a huge success with converting those, but it's always good to have something, at least, letting them know that we received their inquiry, like a text message that says, we'll be back in the office at 8 a.m. sharp. We'll be follow up with you right away. Something like that would be helpful to have going out, just so that the customer doesn't think we, are ignoring their inquiry or forgot about them. They probably don't expect to call back at 11 p.m. or midnight for the most part. But we still want to make sure that we have our channels in place so that if that happens on a Saturday afternoon and we're not in the office, or that happens on a Sunday morning, hey, we received your inquiry. We'll be right back with you as soon as we open. It'll be our first call, whatever the case may be. We could set up the phraseology to let them know that just as soon as we get in, they are a top priority. So, or we can have someone on call at home on the weekends. I was a dispatcher for years at a restoration company. And so we always had weekends where someone was on call. And so in that case, we would pay someone per call they had to field that turned into an appointment. So there's a way to do it where someone can work on their own time and still be able to field the leads. But at the very least, they should be getting some sort of text or email confirmation that we will be back in touch as soon as the doors open. That would help our conversions on those, because they're already really slim in terms of getting those converted when it's been, a day or two or several hours since they filled it out. You'll get one here and there that convert, but for the most part, we need to warm those up as much as possible. So that would be my suggestion, is have a plan for the off hours that includes some sort of touch that's legal to do if they do fill it out. So
well, I think that's ever more pressing for probably more weekend hours than anything.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
If your call center's not open, 7 days a week or any of that kind of stuff. I love that idea from what you're sharing, is that you have somebody that's on call that you're paying, $20 an appointment, that, they can always log in. Everything's virtual now anyway. They can quickly, on their own time, quickly go through that. I think that's a great, obviously, plan to be able to do that. And then I think there's some legalities here, obviously, Ruben, maybe you can speak into that here. Obviously, there's certain times you can't call and text people here too, when it comes to any lead form that's being filled out. Any recommendations or kind of best practices you've seen on that?
Yeah, so that's interesting you say that. So I think it's depending on who we're talking to here on the webinar, right? Who's out there. If you're a regional brand, you should definitely be looking into your county, state-wide regs that deal with outbounding, whether it's TCPA, whether it's DNC. Sometimes you can't call certain areas or counties. So definitely encourage everybody to take a look at that. We do see a lot of national brands, obviously, like think of like ADT or Empire Today or just big national brands where they even have a technology partner that helps to dictate within their dialer or within their outreach which laws are applicable at which times at what portion of the day. So there is technology out there that governs compliance on the outbound side for brands who are operating in every market or 20, 30, 40 different states. So that's something I would add to kind of the conversation that there is technology like everything that's out there and trying to figure out, is this a solution or something that I need, or can we have a compliance person on staff, or, hey, is this part of not only the call center director's role, but also the lead purchaser? And maybe you're coming together to go, hey, which laws are the right laws? And maybe we should consult with somebody at a conference, or Tony Hoty, or one of us here on the webinar. So I feel like a lot of brands who are really growing and going into different states are coming out and saying, hey, this is information I don't know. Let me go to a conference. Let me try to figure out what is the best thing to do so that I can make a good recommendation to my company.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and just like you said, it is different. Those compliance, those rules can be different per county and per city, per state. So you do have to be careful about, what you do on that side of things, and not, I think automation is great, but automation doesn't care about the laws of when you can text, when you can call people. So you do have to be careful about following the rules on that one. So, I think that the other thing is kind of going in through, I think, Ruben, you started touching on this, is just the technology that's out there. What kind of new technologies have you been seeing companies start to adopt? I'll let you kind of run with that one, Ruben, to start with.
Yeah, so one that I mentioned right now, and I'll kind of throw a plug out there, Customer Dynamics. We've worked with them. They have some large clients where, they're essentially trying to get supporting compliance for not everything that's compliant, right? Obviously, here at Active Prospect, we have a product called Trusted Form, which helps to mitigate TCPA issues on digital leads, on web forms. But contractors can generate leads on a bunch of different sides, and including field marketing, right? Where you're writing someone's information down, or in an event, like what governs the law once you take that phone number back to your call center, and how can your call center reach out, and what's good, what's bad. So there's a lot of learning around that. In terms of technology, I think kind of how Megan was starting the conversation is everybody's using SMS now. Folks are using SMS services. We have quite a few that are listed in our marketplace on our website. But that's key. When you're delivering a lead, we see a lot of clients that we onboard from the get now saying, hey, I not only want the lead to go to my CRM, but I want it to go to my SMS provider or this SMS tool that I'm using. So that's number one. Number two, we are seeing a lot of brands starting to relay their consumer data to finance companies in real time. I think this is just like the rise of routing. People are realizing with technology, you can route to not just your CRM, but to your dialer, to your SMS, to everywhere. So we're seeing more and more brands go, hey, we don't want to type in our name anymore into the finance portal. Can you just API it in? And so we're starting to connect a lot more finance portal APIs to what we do. And then I would say the third thing, which is not new, but everyone's using a cool design tool. I know Leap has really taken the market by storm. Obviously, AccuLynx and the roofing side has a big database. We see a lot of Lead Perfection. We see a lot of Market Sharp. We see a lot more brands who are growing out of regional now going, hey, we need Salesforce. Like, we just can't have this smaller customized CRM. We need to have an enterprise system. So I would say those are the three things that I've seen over the last 3-4 months, and certainly in this year, that are relevant on a lot of brands.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that, we'll have to, I'll put the link here to the Contractor Dynamics. I think that is be an interesting one to kind of dive into from just I think compliance is a big thing, obviously, from Trusted Forms and even what Active Prospect does. And kind of sending that lead multiple different directions simultaneously to make sure it's all really going to the right places, that, your team, even down, you're not doing data entry down there. I'll throw it over to you, Megan. We'll dive into this one. What technology have you kind of been seeing here recently?
There's been a couple of things that I've saw that's interesting to me. I haven't done a ton of research on either one yet, but I will mention them because I believe if anyone else has a need for either of these things. One I saw that's interesting to me that I'm going to look into further is caller ID reputation. That seems to be one that a lot of people are liking because of the amount of calls that are getting flagged as spam likely. And then the other one I saw that I'm going to be looking into pretty quickly is the Balto AI. That's interesting to me. And that one is, I feel like, going to do a certain thing for call center training that I don't know if any of the other ones have. It's kind of doing for call centers what Real a Voice is doing for sales teams in the home. So it gives us, data and things that we can find out about our team that we would never know unless we sat there and listened to every single call. And so that's just not, it's too time consuming for most call center managers. They have, day in and day out, projects to work on, things to do. And so coaching ends up kind of falling by the wayside because it's the last thing on the list, right? This happens all the time in call centers left and right. So I think it's really interesting if we had an AI, thing just like that totally gives us all that data without having to listen to hours and hours of calls. I think that will be interesting. I haven't looked into it yet, so I can't sign off and say one way or another on it, but it is something I do plan to look into. A few people have mentioned it to me now, and I've done a little research, and I'm kind of liking what I see so far. So interested to look into that.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. I'm right there with you too. I've looked at it a little bit and kind of heard a couple of companies using it, and it's a fascinating tool to be able to, because just like you said, if you're not familiar with the Real a Voice stuff, it like records the sales rep's conversation and transcribes it while they're in the home with the sales presentation. And like, there's all this technology that's out there. You can see with the presentation tools, knowing how long you've been on each slide and in the home and how long your sales reps are there. But if you're tying both of those pieces together of what your sales rep said, you're able to go and say and tweak and change and coach on the sales side of things that much more. Megan, I'm curious on, obviously you've been in the industry for a while here too. One thing I've seen so much of is there's so much emphasis into the sales portion. So, sales trainings, and it sends sales reps to the sales trainings. I mean, that's when people are signing in ink and checks, right? So we put so much more effort, emphasis in that. But ultimately, like the call center, there's just as much training and salesmanship that kind of goes into that early stage of the conversation to get somebody in the door in the first place. First, yes. So why don't you think people invest as much in the call center side of things as they do in the sales? Is that?
I mean, it's that sales affects the bottom line immediately, and so it's seen as the most important. And I'm not saying it's not. I believe that there's a reason that, we have to pour into our sales team first, because the truth is, if it's kind of like the chicken and the egg, like we can invest in marketing and all these strategies and we can train people properly. But if we have a sales team that's got an $1,800 NSLI, it doesn't really matter. I just have to bring in more leads. It's going to cost me more. So that sales team needs to be, operating at an NSLI that makes sense for my company. Otherwise, it's going to bring the lead cost up so high that I'm going to be in a rough shape in that area. So it takes both, right? But I think what we have to stop thinking is that the call center can be manned by a receptionist or a secretary. That's where I feel like we're really dropping the ball. Is it's sort of the afterthought, and it's truly more of an inside sales role because we are selling appointments. We may not be selling products, but we are selling appointments. And I think what people forget is that even though the appointments don't cost a monetary amount of money, if they cost 90 minutes of your time, that's still something the customer has to pay for, and that's with their time. And sometimes it's easier to get them to write the check than to spend the time. So, even though we're not selling the actual product out of the call center, we are selling the appointment. And the same thing goes for that as for in the house with sales, which is when perceived value exceeds price, people buy. When people look at our in-home visit as more valuable than the price we're asking them to pay, which is 90 minutes of their time, they do it. when people look at our in-home visit as not as valuable as what we're asking them to pay, which is 90 minutes of their time, people find an excuse or a reason or something better to do. So, I think it's the same thing. It's just that we're selling an appointment, and the presentation on the phone is, 6 to 8 minutes. The presentation in the home is 2 to 3 hours. The only difference is one of them you're selling an appointment and you're asking for time. The other you're selling a product and you're asking for money, but it's very similar in every other aspect. So it is something that needs to be focused on from the first person that answered the phone, only if you care about your customer experience.
No, I think you're right on the nail on the head there too, Megan, is that I think it is always a both and. Obviously, you can't have lack of sales training. It's going to affect one another. But I think, like you're saying, it's like that there is two sales to this equation. You got to sell the value to that appointment, and you got to have somebody trained and know how to do that on the front end. So I think that's where I think the real voice piece is like, we'll invest and use the tools. I highly encourage everyone to put just as much effort and energy into your team, your call center, your inside sales team, to be able to train and give them resources and tools to be able to sell that appointment and to train around that too. I think so there's accountability that needs to be done in the sales presentation, because you can hand off a bunch of leads and you go, why didn't they close that one? Why did that guy close at this NSLI and that one closes at this? It's like, well, maybe that's the way it's always going to be. Or else you can kind of train people and find out why. Now we're able to use the AI tools to find out why they didn't close in the home, and to kind of coach and train people. Same thing with call centers, but it's often more volume over on the call center side. So that can easily get lost in those conversations there too. So
I would just add something that I've seen through call centers, and I've traveled to a lot of installers, contact centers, is just the cleanliness and the way that they treat their call center teams or contact center teams. They treat them just as good, if not better, than they do traditional sales teams. In home services, sales teams usually get all the glory because they're closing, they're making good money. To kind of Megan's point, if you have a culture of respecting and lifting up your contact center reps, some of these, I know contact center reps who make 6 figures a year setting appointments, and they love their job. They love that they're able to come in and be somebody on the phone to help somebody find their new roof or their new solar system or whatever it is. So a couple of call centers that come to mind: Long Home Roofing, which is in kind of the Baltimore region area, and then Improve It Home Remodeling, which is in the Ohio region. They both have super clean contact centers, and they even have like a game room for their contact center staff that only their contact center staff can go to, which I think is really neat. It kind of creates that culture, that club, that atmosphere of success and acknowledgement.
No, I love that. I think that's a really good point to make. It's just, I think it is about culture. Megan, I think you hit that one out of the park here before in other webinars here with us too. It's all about the culture you kind of build on that team. And just as you mentioned, running a call center or an inside sales organization led by a receptionist who's just managing time and who's in the office to answer phone calls, you're going to miss a lot of opportunity just because they're not trained. They're not following a predefined sales presentation and the script of what they're actually getting from point A to point B and helping a homeowner through that process. There's still a system that needs to be run there. So I'm curious. Let's dive into the nitty gritty of that, those pieces of it. So it's just out of curiosity, how much should callers, inside salespeople and managers be paid? I think, Ruben, you mentioned some companies making, people making 6 figures, doing this. I think that's one thing I always see is just like you said, is that sales reps are over there, they're making good money, and they're kind of, there's a different tier that they're naturally on than the call centers kind of over here, on just a different tier. So I'm curious from both of you, what have you seen companies do successely from payment structures and compensation?
Or I can tackle the first portion if you want me, Megan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it. So I've seen several different, there's all types of ways to do it. A lot of folks traditionally pay on just the set appointment, right? Hey, did you set the appointment? And you're getting paid a bonus on that. There's also bonuses that come at the time of issue. So if you're getting a demo, you're getting an appointment and the demo is completed, well, then you're getting a certain amount. I've seen a lot of success where everybody is factored into the overall sale or the install. So I see a lot of brands who really they're paying their contact center team, but they're really giving them an opportunity to set quality appointments where it's leading to a demo and a sale. So they're reaping the benefit of an installation revenue, not just a set revenue, which could lead to a lot of numbers, but not necessarily a lot of output. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. But like I mentioned, I have seen and I do know contact center reps who, they're great at what they do. And so they have an unlimited kind of ability to come in and work leads. And obviously through being seasoned, they get preferential treatment, right? They're getting the better leads. They're coming in and being able to, they have a track record of closing. So I think it's dependent on every different brand and how the contact center team wants to manage that. But I feel like if you have a great incentive plan and you're paying based off of install holistically as a team, that's much easier, much better than paying just at the set level. Love to hear Megan's feedback on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with pay structures, I always like to say begin with the end in mind. We have to reverse engineer the result we're looking for. And I think there's far too many pay plans that are devised out of, well, what is an average price in our market to pay someone? And I think that's the wrong place to start. What we have to, and of course we need to pay a living wage where we can get a decent candidate, don't get me wrong, but that's only part of it. The other part has to be, as Ruben said, in the bonus and commission incentive plan, right? Because call center people, or people in general, I shouldn't even just say call center people, marketing, sales people in general, they work to a certain level. They're a high expectation person or they're not. There's one of two things here. So, the problem that I see a lot of companies have is they pay too much base or salary, and then they can't figure out why they're not getting results from the team. Well, because you are hiring people that have an expectation of $17, $18, $20 an hour, they're going to work just hard enough to hit $17, $18 to $20 an hour. Okay. So if you're paying them 15 in base, they're going to make a little bit in bonuses, but it's not that much. And so, first of all, it starts with the people we hire. And then the secondary part is, is the pay structure beginning with the end in mind and getting the result I'm looking for? Couldn't agree with Ruben more that the set cannot be, I don't ever incentivize the set. I think that's the absolute backwards way to look at things. I think we incentivize people to throw everything against the wall, qualified or not, and see what sticks. And I'm not a fan of that. I think what has to be good for the goose is good for the gander. I think that the lead has to have a chance to go all the way through the cycle from set to issue to demo to sale. And if it doesn't have at least a chance to demo, it shouldn't be on the schedule. So if the result that I want is a qualified demo, then that's where I pay the bonus, is at that portion. So some companies will pay it at the issue because they say that it's not the call center's fault what the salesperson does with the lead, which I understand too. I get that, but I've been on the sales end of the business too. So I've got to see it from both perspectives. To me, the most successful pay plans that I've seen have been about 70% base pay, 30% bonus structure, and we pay a certain, per appointment amount. Now, on inbound and outbound, that's going to be a different amount. If I'm resurrecting a 2-year-old lead out of the database that no one's talked to, it's going to pay a little bit more than a lead that called in today and said, hey, I want Windows, because that one's an easy, that's a gimme compared to this one, right? And so we may have different amounts that we pay depending on, the overall challenge that the lead implies. The other thing we don't want to do is we don't want to set up a pay structure that has people sitting around waiting for the phone to ring because they don't want the rejection they're going to get on the outbound call. So the outbound call has to be lucrative enough for people to actually pick up the phone and dial. Otherwise, they'll just sit there with their phone on the receiver waiting for the easy one. If all leads were equal, we paid, let's say, $20 a demo on the easy inbound and on the outbound, what's the incentive to call outbound? There isn't one. So when you put a pay structure together, you have to look at all these things. But I'm a fan of 70% base, 30% bonus. But that's also, when we get a really high level performer in the call center, their bonuses may extremely exceed that. I'm talking for the average rep where we're trying to build a pay structure that's effective and stays under budget. The other thing to consider is with leaders, we have to tie it into budget somehow. The leader cannot be incentivized by people just putting demos on the board, or they will never cut people that don't perform. They will keep even a person that performs 1 or 2 demos a week, even when they're not, hitting goals and hitting bonuses. They will keep them in order to just get that extra bonus off of their leads. And you don't want that. We want the call center leader incentivized to make the call center run efficiently, meaning keep the people and coach the people up that need help, but keep the people that are doing really well. And we want their pay structure to say, man, if I let somebody drag payroll down for 3 months, that's going to hurt my bonus. They'll actually do something about it. So we have to make sure that it works from all perspectives, because otherwise we end up in a tough position. But it needs to be something where, when the company wins big, when we have a record setting month, the call center manager wins big too, because they were a big part of making that happen, right? But if the company is losing money and the call center is not as effective as it needs to be, we can't pay bonuses to leaders. They're not doing their job at the bare minimum. So I always say that we have to have a goal or a benchmark that the regular call center people have to hit in order to get their bonuses. You can't hit one lucky one and get a $50,000 solar sale, and that's the only lead you set all month, but it happened to sell and you make 1% on the sale. That doesn't work, because we paid you payroll for 4 weeks straight to get that one sale, right? So we have to look at overall how it works. So
I'll just add, I'll kind of add to that, kind of the transparency that goes into organizations. I feel like a lot of organizations, they don't want to share the reporting to their team, or they're only willing to share successes or when it's a failure, but not 24/7, 7 days a week. So a lot of the organizations that I see that do really well are the organizations that have a flat screen TV, or that have stats that are updated in real time, that are daily. There's a couple of different technologies out there where when someone gets an appointment or a demo, there's like a walk-up song, or there's like graphics and everyone's like clapping and like, there's such a big difference between a contact center culture where people are celebrated and people are excited to get to work, and our call center that people are just like, man, I'm just trying to hit my number, and it's like all stressful. There's a real reality difference between those types of brands who are fostering that culture of, I want everybody to make money here. Let's not waste our time. Here's your stats. Here, let's go from this baseline here. And I think a lot of the reporting, keeping it transparent is key to a lot of these organizations understanding that success. And unless you're sharing reporting or having accurate reporting, it's harder to foster that growth with your team, the way call centers used to do in the old school days.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, I think I think culture, just like you're touching on, Ruben, is so important. But that transparency through and celebration is like, it's got to be everything. If everyone's heads down and you're just sitting there trying to churn through the leads all the time, you need to stop and celebrate and go through and and make it a fun atmosphere and culture, or else that directly reflects your performance. At the end of the day, if you're happy or excited about the output and the impact that you're actually making by setting these leads, and what was resulting in happy prospects and customers and salespeople who have sold, how did that lead that you set turn into a project and the before and after? Like, tying those things in together make a huge difference in just the culture that you set within your organization. So I love that. I think from a compensation side of things, I'm hearing you say, Megan, it's like tying those things together from, making sure that we're incentivizing demos, that 30% is tied to, the incentivizing the performance. But I think the other thing I think pulling out of what you shared there too, is that you want to make sure you're not setting your wage based off of what's Amazon paying, or what's where do I get the company in the door, period. It's going like, how much can my business afford of someone who's performing really well, and let's back those numbers out and then pay people a really good amount of money, because that keeps that gets people excited that you can get really, really good talent through that way as well. I think that's one thing. I think that call centers are often paid far less, and you often attract, a certain level of talent with that as well. And then that's just, again, it's built into the culture. That's how the feeling goes. You go, well, it's not being paid very much. And that's, you kind of get what you pay for. But
money is important, but that can't be the only reason that they work for you. If they're only coming because you pay $1 more than everyone else, they won't be here in 3 months anyway. You will have wasted so much time in training. They have to be here because they're part of the company's bigger mission. And to speak to what Ruben said, that's one of the things that Tundraland did really well. And it's one of the reasons they grew to 150 million in like 10 years. It's because Brian opened up his books to everyone and he showed every single person in the company how they were compensated on an incentive plan. He even has admin people on incentive plan. And the reason is because he felt about that transparency, Ruben, like that is the best way to go so that everyone sees that when we all win, we all win. But when we all lose, guys, there's no bonuses to pay you if we're losing as a company. And no one can argue with that, right? Because it's only fair to do it both ways. And so, but I couldn't agree more that it cracks me up when companies don't show the call center the numbers. And then I say, well, how on earth do you expect them to hit benchmarks? They have no idea what you expect of them and they have no idea where they're coming in. So, I think that there's a lot to be said for that.
Well, and yeah, there's a sense of like fairness and just a, kind of team mentality when everyone's on the same page and there's a level of transparency there of like, I think we all expect that to be, but if it's behind a closed curtain, it doesn't get a whole lot of incentive on that side. So I think that's the wheel of retention is the like cultural fit. Compensation has to be a good fit, and they have to also have career trajectory. They need to make sure that they're actually growing as a person. But yeah, compensation is only part of that. You need to build a good culture, and you have to give them upward mobility, even if that's just upskilling within the same role. So let's talk about just recruiting for a minute here, just parking there. So let's, when it comes to recruiting good talent, obviously some companies are successfully doing kind of the work from home option. In doing that with some technology, but also obviously call centers are still growing, contact centers are still growing. So how do we recruit and number one, just good talent? You kind of mentioned you do need to see what else people are paying out there to make sure that your $15 an hour is even going to be competitive in your market. But how other ways are you seeing companies have a successful time recruiting? Megan, I'll let you handle this one first.
Okay. Yeah. We really have to think outside the box. First of all, we have to always be recruiting. I think that's the biggest mistake in our industry is that we're not always recruiting. And so what happens is we lose someone, we don't have enough leads, and then we panic. We put an ad on Indeed or Monster or ZipRecruiter, and then we cross our fingers and we hope that they pick us. And while that is a strategy, we have other things that we have to do other than that because the recruiting market has changed a lot. It's very different in the past couple of years than it was, pre-COVID and pre-pandemic area. The way that things have worked with remote remote work has really made things change a little bit. And so, what's happening right now is recruiting is, from the big leather chair and, everyone wants to place ads and sort of post and pray, but it's the same thing as your lead strategy. If that's the only thing you have, like what happens when people just don't apply or your ad bombs, right? So we have to have other ways to do that. And one of the things I found a lot of success with is Indeed reverse resume search. Because I could actually fish in the right pond with that. I can type in skill sets or keywords or other companies, competitors. If I want someone, and maybe you do want someone that's been in our industry, maybe you don't, but maybe you want someone that's been in a call center in a different industry. Maybe we're home improvement and there's people with cable background or energy wholesaling background, and they may have the skill set on the phone, but they may not all have all the bad habits from working at a bunch of companies in our industry, right? So I really like reverse resume search where you buy contacts and subscriptions from Indeed and you can send emails to people that have what you're looking for. Sometimes, Sean, we're looking for the underemployed, not the unemployed. The other thing is to always be looking, like if you're at a restaurant and you get great service, you should have little cards made up that you can give someone that says you gave great service and smiling face, great personality. We love to hire people like you. You never know whose life you change just by showing up at the right time and letting them know that we're available. There's all kinds of other outside the box ideas between bandit signs, flyering cars, things of that nature. We used to have a recruiting day where we'd go to the mall and talk to all the young people working jobs where they made $10 an hour with no incentive and talked to them about what we offered, right? And you'd picked up 2 or 3 hungry kids that wanted to learn about business. So some little golden nuggets in there.
Yeah, and I'll mention, I always like the referral incentive for employees bringing in other employees. We even have that here at Active Prospect. I just brought in one of a brand new sales director for home services, and I got a referral fee of $500 for bringing in somebody to our own team. So I think, little ways like that really help companies utilize their existing workforce to promote internally.
Yeah,
companies, I feel like all do that, but they don't promote it, Ruben.
Yeah.
Everybody says they have a referral bonus, but if you ask the employees how much it is, they don't know, right?
Yeah,
so it's like that has to start day one in the hiring packet, right? That we tell them about that, right? During training. So that was just something I wanted to add.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I want to be respectful of both of your time here today as well. And this is jam-packed with amazing information. So I think obviously when using every means possible to get in touch with that customer, obviously being compliant, there's some amazing tools out there that we'll drop in the show notes here as well, that you need to really be always improving your contact center. And even terminology, contact center, call center, sales inside sales center, whatever's the best for you. It's all about the culture and really how you view those people on your team, the culture that you set. And that's also going to be kind of where you put the focus as well. The training that you put into it, the effort and energy that go into this means everything. So again, thank you both so much for your time and here today. With me, Megan and Ruben, I'll let you kind of exit first here. But Ruben, tell us a little bit how we can reach out to you and we can honor you by learning more about what you do.
Yeah, thanks. You can reach me at ruben@activeprospect.com. I also have a website, rubenugarte.io. But I'd love to hear from any brands who need support with their technology. And I appreciate you, Sean and Megan, for having me on, and appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your time here today. So Megan, how can people reach out to you and learn more about what you do?
Sure. Yeah, you can reach me at megan@tonyhoty.com. You can follow me on social media. I share a lot of good tips on there, all different videos, some about leadership, some about lead gen. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, all the above.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for spending your time.
Thanks for the time, Sean. Thanks, Megan.
Have a great one, everybody.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
We'll see you guys later. Have
Bye.
a good one.